Hey Gator fans, thanks for tuning in. It's time to talk a little football. You have had one of the most difficult schedules in 2024, but it might be lightening up a little bit for the 2025 season. I want to talk about it. Now, obviously, the SEC schedule remains the same. All of the opponents just flip home and away. And out of conference has basically seen us swap UCF for USF. And we get Miami on the road and Florida State in the swamp. Let's talk about this schedule a little bit with the new information that we know and have learned. So, if I had to describe UF's schedule right now, I'd say that there are 5 to 6 games that would be absolutely unacceptable to lose when we look at the year this far out. Then I think there's about 6 games that are difficult in varying degrees. I'd say 4 of those are what we could label as toss-ups, and 2 are pretty difficult, but certainly not impossible. So let's talk about the 6 games UF should win first. But just a quick reminder before we get too into it, you can check out all the win totals for UF and everyone else over at BetUS. All right, so the 6 games that I think the Gators should go 6-0 in, at least looking this far out with the information we have at this moment. Long Island, USF, Mississippi State, Kentucky, Tennessee, and FSU. Now, they open with Long Island. Gators kind of go back to a patsy as an opener. I like getting a little bit of a tune-up game in. That's what we're getting. This is an absolute must-win. Played UCF last year. They are tougher than USF. USF is well coached by Alex Golish, and they've got a lot of Florida boys. So I don't want to say this is a gimme game, but the Gators should beat USF. And if they don't, I would assume that there will be pitchforks that show up in Gainesville. Mississippi State. Florida took care of business last year against Mississippi State. We have no reason to think that they're going to be any more put together this year. This game happens in the swamp too. No concerns about it. Kentucky. We got the Kentucky Demon off our back last year. I fully expect to return to the normal order of things, which is Florida beats Kentucky year in and year out. Now, Tennessee is interesting. And as of a couple of weeks ago, I wouldn't have put Tennessee in this, for sure going to win category. But I do now because with Nico having departed Portal and now he's going to UCLA, Tennessee is on the hunt for a starting quarterback. This is a hard time to fill in with somebody. Spring practice has already happened. You got to hope that somebody is hopping in the portal and you can scoop them up and adjust them to your system right away. There's all these rumors about quarterbacks that they've tried to lure away from their programs that they're currently at and have failed at. Couple that with the fact that they lost their best running back. They lost some defensive players. I don't think that this Tennessee team is necessarily the Tennessee team we played last year already. And then you kind of factor in the quarterback situation. And the game is in the swamp, which Tennessee has a huge issue with year in and year out anyway. I think that this is a win for the Gators. Now, I don't want to discount the fact that this was a playoff team last year, right? And Heupel has done a great job building this roster. So not trying to take away from that either. But with the information we have today, I would be really surprised if Florida lost to Tennessee. And I think this is a must-win game for them. And then Florida State. Who the heck knows what Florida State's roster is going to look for? They're currently trying to build that roster in the spring portal because nothing from the last year's roster is even worth keeping. But we don't know what they're going to come up with, but we know that we're not concerned about it, right? It's going to be in the swamp. I understand it's a rivalry. I just think with what they put together last year, it would be shocking if they rallied that much from last season to this season. I think this is a win. I think it's kind of a explanation point on the season for Coach Napier at home. It's going to be a fun one. Florida wins this one. So Florida's 6-0 when we go through those in my mind. I think worst case scenario, they go 5-1, and that's if maybe, Norvell has pulled it together and this Florida State team looks better than we think, or Tennessee pulls a rabbit out of their hat at quarterback and somehow pulls off a win in the swamp. But I think there's a great chance Florida is bowl eligible right off the bat, those 6 teams. Now you got some toss-ups. We travel to Miami in September. You've got LSU, at Texas A&M, and at Ole Miss. So talk about those a little bit. I really think LSU, that's probably the toughest of those four toss-ups. Nussmeier is a Heisman favorite. I am not personally sold on him. I don't think he's played particularly well against the Gators. We beat LSU last year. They return a ton of talent, and Baton Rouge is one of the toughest places in America to play. Also, one of my very favorite places to go to a game. If you are a diehard Gator fan and you have not watched a Florida LSU game in Death Valley, put it on your bucket list right now and make it happen. It is one of the coolest experiences in all of college football. All of that being said, it's the toughest of the toss-up, but it is a winnable game. Then I think you've got Miami. What are they going to be like with Carson Beck instead of Cam Ward? I think that Carson Beck didn't play well against the Gators last year. I think if DJ Lagway doesn't go down with an injury, Florida beats Carson Beck and Georgia. I'm not that scared of playing him. Now, listen, I know there's going to be Miami fans in the mentions that are like, yeah, Allie, you weren't scared of playing Cam Ward either. And that's true, but I also didn't have personal experience watching my team against Cam Ward. I have experience watching the Gators and Napier play Carson Beck, and not that impressed. I think Florida also needs to get payback for last year's beatdown in the swamp. That was a terrible way to start this season. It left a bad taste in everybody's mouth. It made Florida look unprepared going into that game. It wasn't fun. We don't like to lose to Miami. We don't like to lose to anybody. We certainly don't like to lose to Miami. And it's one that needs to be avenged. Then I would say is Texas A&M. They were such a Jekyll and Hyde team last year. Hard to know what you're going to get with them. The Gators still have to be annoyed at how poorly they played last year against the Aggies. That was a horrible game to be sitting and watching in the swamp. First of all, we got all the weather experiences over the course of the time that game was, but Florida didn't look electric. They didn't look like they wanted to be there. They didn't look prepared. That was the game that really upset most Gator fans last year, that particular loss, because that team didn't look ready to play. But it ended up being really the catalyst for the second half of the season, right? And just the complete 180 that this team, particularly the defense, did. So I'm kind of glad it happened because it was a spark plug, but it was embarrassing at the time, right? And this game's at Kyle Field, which is a tough place to play, but it is a winnable game. Florida could have beat Texas A&M last season had we had the second half of the season's team playing in that game. I definitely think it's a winnable one this year. And then you got Ole Miss. Florida beat Ole Miss last year when they shouldn't have. They kept Ole Miss out of the playoffs. Austin Simmons versus DJ Lagway. This is amusing because, Austin Simmons was committed to the Gators. He reclassified. He was coming to Gainesville. He was going to play baseball until he wasn't. And essentially, his dad told the world that he was scared of competition, and the Gators had DJ Lagway coming in. And I don't know about you, but I'm pumped we have DJ Lagway as opposed to Austin Simmons. Ole Miss lost a ton of talent, but Lane Kiffin is a great recruiter of the transfer portal, and he just dove right back in. At this point, this team is kind of an unknown. I would say maybe they're an 8-4 team at best, maybe a 9-3 team. This is a road game, and the Grove is a festive place to play, but I feel like it's probably UF's best chance of all the toss-up games out. These four, I think Ole Miss, they should win. And honestly, they can win all four of these toss-up games, but if we're going to rank them, I would say Ole Miss is the easiest, then A&M, then Miami, then LSU. So, if we win those first six and then we go, let's say 3-3 in the other six, they're going to be close to, if not in the playoffs. So we talked about the four toss-up. Let's talk about the two tough ones, Texas and Georgia. Right? Let's talk about Texas first. They come to the swamp. Last year was not a good indication of how Florida stacks up against Texas. Graham Mertz was out, and then DJ Lagway was out. It was not equal turf last year, right? But Lagway versus Arch Manning should be insanely fun. Texas has an elite amount of talent. But listen, y'all, the swamp can be a great equalizer. Can UF's offense find success against a really good defense that even held Ohio State down in the playoffs? Can UF's defense slow Texas's offensive game? This is not going to be easy, right? And this game, probably more than anything else, Texas and Georgia, these are like benchmark games. Have we turned the corner enough where we can hang with the teams that we consider the elite of the conference? I think we can, but we're going to find out on the field. Right? It's not going to be easy. I think UF has a much better chance in this game this year than they did last year. I think even if Florida loses it, it should be a battle. And I think that's what Gator fans are looking for. We just want you to be in every game. I don't think the expectation is that Billy Napier runs the table. I don't even necessarily think that the expectation is playoff or bust. But I think for Gator fans, the expectation that you are in every game is where the floor is, right? You need to at least look like you belong in every game that you play. Florida has the ability to hang with Texas. They have the ability to beat them. I don't know. We're going to find out. But they have the ability to hang with them. Now, Georgia. Should they have won last year? Maybe, right? I think Florida could have beaten them if DJ Lagway doesn't go down. And what will Georgia look like with Gunnar Stockton? Did they rebuild in the trenches? Can UF stay healthy? Can Napier get the Kirby smart monkey off of his back? We're going to find out. I think last year we saw a Georgia team that was a little bit down. And I know that's kind of silly to say for a team that won the SEC and made it to the playoffs. But I know you guys have watched Georgia as closely as I have watched Georgia over the last several years. And this team was a click behind the previous Georgia teams. I don't think that'll stay like this forever. But I do think that there's a possibility that Florida can exploit that this season. Kirby Smart is an incredible recruiter. I think he's an incredible coach, and he will get this back up to the Kirby Smart Georgia standards. But I don't know that it's going to happen this season. I think this is the year to kind of excise that demon. The Gators can get a win. I feel like Florida is a little bit of more of a known entity than Georgia is coming into this season, which is not something we've been able to say for a really long time. Okay, so when I look at it, there are 6 games you should almost certainly win, and then there are 6 games you can win. When the schedule is tough, it's really tough. But for about half of it, UF has some major advantages, which is great news for the Gators. I love the over on 7.5 win total. And, I just think UF needs to go 2-4 in the tough 6 to get there, right? And I think that happens. I think that easily happens. I'm not saying that the schedule is easy, of course. I just think it's manageable, right? And I think it's more manageable than last year, even though the majority of the opponents are the same. They start with what should be a couple of auto wins with Long Island and USF. And during the middle of the season, they have some very winnable games after a tough 4-game stretch. And they finish November in a place where they can win a lot of football games. I really do think that this team can win and should win 10 football games this year, which is wild to even verbalize. But I think that this roster is built for that. And I think that this schedule is built for that. So, I don't want to say it's 10 wins or bust, but I do think the Gators are fully capable of at least 10 wins. And if 10 wins happens with this schedule, a playoff berth happens, which is also pretty crazy. I want to know what your thoughts are in the comment. What do you think our record is going to be? Who do you think the toughest opponents are? Am I right with the 6 that I think should be wins? I want to hear all about it down in the comments. Also, make sure you are subscribed to the channel. I appreciate your support. Go Gators!